Hey there, it's Boots Owen here. This is a Sturmey Archer 3-speed hub gear. It's in AW 91-9. Don't know, can you see that? 91-9 AW 3-speed. That means it's 1991, which makes it 30 years old. Sturmey Archer. It's got an issue where that shouldn't be. When I spin it this way, it should engage. So there's obviously some little flywheel pawls missing in there. So the first thing to do is unscrew this chain here, if we can. There we go. You might have to do this before you take it off the wheel anyways. Take it off the bike frame even. So that comes out. Get this nut off. This one's got a double kind of nut arrangement. Get these off. I'm not entirely sure if I have to take these off, but I'll take them off just to tidy it up a bit. And then we want to get this gear wheel off. I'm not even sure if we have to do that now that I come to think of it. Get a screwdriver in and pop off this ring. Watch your eyes because they could pop. There we go. That allows me to take off this locking washer and the gear. Now this bit shouldn't be doing that. So somewhere in here I've got to take off some nuts and bolts. And some of this process is academic because the wheel is quite buckled. Some of this process is academic because the wheel is quite buckled, but let's get a spanner onto the... Well, I can do it from above actually. Maybe it's a bit clearer. Maybe not, with two spanners on it. Prop that up. So I put one spanner on the shaft here because it's got a flat face on it. And there's a locking nut here to slacken that off. There. It's loose, but it's not coming off, so that's it. Could be cleaner, I imagine. A bit of dirt on the threads there. A washer, quite a fat one. A locking washer. Then give this, no, it's clean enough actually, I think. Square bearing retaining washer, bearing retaining nut, I think. You could do this in a vise, might be easier if you held the other side of the threaded rod, the axle, in a vise. You might find it a bit easier. So this one, I think the bearings sounded quite dry in it. Not necessarily an issue, but yeah, so here's the cone from one bearing. It looks a bit worn to me. Just clean it up. It's polished, but it's not necessarily worn. It's got quite a nice finish to it, but I see, is there some pits there? Maybe. Then this just lifts off. Okay, so there's a spring in here as well. The plastic outer. Now you can see there's some bits of grit and crud on that. We need to clean that off before we put it back together. Whether or not I put it back together in this video is neither here nor there. Now there's another set of bearings on the inside. This is what we're trying to get to, I think. So I should have lifted off this cover first. This thing's, I would go so far as to say it's knackered. These bearings are all in position, but they're really crusty. That's the selector there. And there's the bearings on the inside. Now, will they pop out without coming everywhere? It's a spacer with tabs on it, or recesses on it. Just having loosened it up that much seems to have freed it up. There's another space in here. This collar here should also unscrew. I don't know if I want to get into that. So the idea with behind these things is that the little slot right in the center there, there's a tiny slot. There you go. Slot here, and that centerpiece is pulled in and out by the chain, by the gear selector, and it chooses which set to engage on. There's a set of planetary gears in here. I'm going to get a spanner on it and see if I can loosen that off. I can't remember if this has a left hand or a right hand thread. And there would be a special tool for this, and of course I don't have it. So, get the middle size Stetson out. 2'1", 24 inch. Too much. So the axle's in the vise, but it doesn't hold the wheel. You still have to hold the wheel against your body or somehow. No. There we go. And then we can unscrew this. And so you can see this is where we're getting stuck then. Okay, so in here there are little steps, I suppose, and they're filthy. And on this side there are, if I can get them out, I don't know if I can actually, you should be able to see ratchet pawls in there, little teeth that snap out. I have a feeling we're not going to get very far with this one because it's so dirty. And we could clean it up, of course, but I'm just tapping this axle gently. Try and free that up a bit. Okay, we're getting a bit better there. Right, so one of the ratchet pawls has appeared down here. You can see the way that springs like that, and they should both do that. The one on the other side, however, is a different beast. It's in there. There it is. But my suspicion is that if it's playing like that, the spring in it is broken. Should be a little tiny hairspring. And here on top, you can see there's a pivot pin for it, and that can pop out. There's the spring actually. The spring's in position, so no, it's trying to pop out if it was cleaned. But this is as far as this video is going to go, because really all I wanted to do was show you how to get in here. So if your thing's this dirty and the bearings are this far gone, it's arguable whether or not it's worth doing. But I have done it on bikes, and you can keep them going if you get in. There, it's starting to spring back. A liberal application of WD-40 at this point, or diesel, kerosene, anything at all, any kind of a solvent to clean it out, and then dry it off and replace the solvent with motor oil of some description, light motor oil, bicycle oil, whatever. That would get you back on the road, and just reassemble it the way I took it apart and put the bearings in the way I took them apart. You can go further, and you want to get all that crud out. Like, there's a lot of snots in there. You need to take that off from the other side. You take the bearings off. In fact, we might as well keep going. So I have a feeling I'm not going to put this back together because of the way it is. But that doesn't mean I can't take it apart for fun. Provided everything comes off in the end. Let's see. Yeah, the wheel's badly buckled on this, so you'd need new bearings, and I'm sure somebody somewhere is making kits for these, I imagine. I imagine they are. But what I'll do is I'll just keep these parts, because you see you've got these special washers and stuff like that. If they're ever missing, you need them. That's the point of it, was those little tiny ratchet pawls and the springs. They're the issue. They're the difficulty. Where am I going? That's it coming off now. Oh, it's coming off altogether. That's what's the... There we go. But ideally these things should have no dirt in them. And with the older models, they used to have a little oil cup on one side, and you could open it, put in a drop of oil, and by putting in oil frequently it would flush dirt. In theory it would flush dirt out, because the oil would start... Well, I don't know if that's true or not. The oil should come out. A couple of spacers and a nut there. The locking nut. Here's the bearing cup again. Filthy, rusty, dirty. But the idea is if you keep flushing it with oil, eventually it should... Why is that getting stuck? If you keep flushing it with oil, it should keep it clean. And keep everything lubricated and whatnot. There's a bit of snot or something in there getting caught. And we're so close to the end, come on. Sturmey Archer made 4 speeds, 3 speeds, 3-speed and dyno hub, which is the one I used to really like when you get that on a bike, because it meant you had a really high-end bike with a dynamo and a 3-speed. But the other one that's good is a 3-speed brake unit for a drum brake. Drum brakes on a bicycle are really good. I guess disc brakes are good nowadays, but Drum brakes were really good, especially rod operated ones. There's there's loads of stuff that could go wrong, but it never did. There's the cone on this end. Let's just have a look at that. Whoa, it fell out. We'll see what we're dealing with here. This is why this one ain't going back together. You could clean it up, but looking at it, it's hardly worth it. I'll show you now. This side, it has some pitting in it. It's not great. The bearings are filthy. If you look in here, there's a pawl on the other side as well. Let's get light on that. You can see in on this side, there's a ratchet pawl in the back, a ratchet step on the back. So depending on which gear you're in, it drives it on one side or the other. Quite a clever arrangement. And so on the other side, it's even worse. So on the other side, it's even worse. Here's the ratchets. Like you can see, it's been swimming in the water there for a long time. But bits are free, like they're remarkably robust. So depending on where this little guy in the center is, it'll engage here or it'll engage into these guys. And it'll either drive through the planets or not, depending on... It'll come straight through the shaft, it'll come through the planets on this little thing here. It doesn't want to engage because it's so dirty, and then when it's in, it won't turn because it's so bad. And that gives you the number of speeds. That little piece of wire hanging out of there is one of the springs from the pawl, and it shouldn't be that shape. They're incredibly light, you can see it there. And so I've made them myself before, but that's a whole other job. Once they're corroded, you see, they're kind of past it. So getting in here, one pawl is free now. This side, it's loose. So to get these apart, you get in here, push the pin out. It's just a tapered pin, well, a straight pin with a taper on one end, so it goes in quite easily. And in here, there we go. That's the shape of the hairspring. That's the shape of the pawl. That's the hairspring there with a load of dirt on it. Like, they're so delicate, and once they get rusty, they're like the letter R, but with a twist on the end of them, I suppose you could say. Once they get rusty, that's the end of them. Now, the spring appeared for that one. The spring for that one is broken in two. There it is in the end of my hook. The hook's slightly magnetic, so I just picked it up. So that one's a dud. To get this apart, I think if I slide this pin through, pull that out, that's the pin, the bar that the chain rod here slots into. So it gives you the in and out to choose your gear. Then, that's just dirt. This should come off like that. That guy, and then this little guy comes off as well. They're all filthy in here. They should be clean, or at least oily. And that's your main axle there with the gears attached to it. And that's clearing up, you know. It's not... It's only a kind of a surface rust, but you see, because it kills... This is the point of the video. Because it kills those springs, they don't work anymore. So you could flush all that out and begin from here and build it back up again. These wheels no doubt would come up again. I think this is actually stuck here too. I think this should be two parts. Because I think this is supposed to disengage from this one. Is it moving? Because if you can see here, these pins are seated in from this side here, so you need to be able to get that off to get them out, I think. Maybe not. Maybe not. Let's try pulling one out. Let's get a bit of a clean up and see. You can see them in there. They're kind of like they're half captive, those little ends of the shafts. How to get them out if they're in there like that, I don't know. Unless there seems to be a looser one here now that I've hit it a bit. Let's see. Yeah, maybe they're just coming out. Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're just coming out from this end then. I was wrong. It doesn't split. I wasted all that time. There's the pin. There's the half wheel, and that's what we could see from the other side. Looking in there like that. So that's a solid unit. I thought it was split. Okay. Well, there you go. It's filthy and it's worn out, and it's, even if you put it back together, you see instead of having steel on steel, hardened steel on steel, you've got rust on rust, which could be harder than hardened steel. But going back to the start, there's the little spring. Where's it gone? The little spring can just be seen here. That's what we're talking about. It's filthy. Right. Questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching. See you later.